Well, look, where do I begin? Iraq was a war of necessity. We were dealing with a terrorist sponsoring regime that had access to weapons of mass destruction. We can debate that endlessly if you'd like.
Now it's access. Yeah. I thought they had weapons of mass destruction.
They did have weapons of mass destruction.
Oh, the ones that we gave them in the 80s?
Ron,
the one that we gave them in the 80s?
Let me interrupt just for a second. Retired General Paul Eden of the National Security Network today issued this response to Vice President Cheney's remarks last night. We've been talking about it. The record is clear. Dick Cheney and the Bush administration were incompetent war fighters. They ignored Afghanistan for 7 years with a crude approach to counterinsurgency warfare, best illustrated by 1, denying it, 2, ignoring it, 3, bombing it. While our intelligence agencies called the region the greatest threat to America, the Bush White House under-resourced our military efforts, shifted attention to Iraq, and failed to bring to justice the masterminds of September 11th. So we didn't catch Osama bin Laden.
Well,
that's their case.
It sounds like all we're going to do here is indict. All I'm saying is,
should we trust Cheney as an expert on war?
The guys who history will record as losing Afghanistan will not be Dick Cheney and George Bush. If it happens, it will be because of guys on this watch who apparently had access when they came into office to the counterinsurgency strategy that they said last March they wanted to implement, and now they can't figure out whether
Ron,
that's
a
in
good
fact the
question.
strategy
Why did
they
this
want to implement or
administration
not.
shift from its March strategy, which was counterinsurgency, to what looks like something like counterterrorism plus? We're not sure where they're going to end up.
Or minus.
Well, I'm not a mind reader, of course. I can't tell you exactly what President Obama is thinking, but I think, as you brought up before, we've got a different situation now. You now have an illegitimate government in Afghanistan. Well, if it was ever legitimate, but the election was a fraud. So we're now dealing with a government that the Afghan people doesn't believe in. Are we going to make that government our allies in order to defend those very same Afghan people? That requires a little more thought.
Ron, you have got a sanctimony factor here that is extraordinary. I hope you're willing to take responsibility for what comes next.
Okay.
I would hope, Frank, I would hope that Dick Cheney would take responsibility for what he has done in the past.
I know. Attack. If indeed we fail,
well, Frank, when it's appropriate, I will.
Okay, let me tell you the trouble.
Part responsible for the dithering and the failure.
I'm not responsible. Dick Cheney was during his 8 years, Frank.
And we didn't lose Afghanistan during his 8 years.
Let me tell you
we didn't lose a
yes, you did. I beg to differ, Frank.
This is the old.
Not after 9/11.
The old canard. Lose Afghanistan.
Frank, you're a nice guy, but you do yourself no credit by defending a man like Dick Cheney.
Let me get one at a time. We don't own Afghanistan. Every time you go in and occupy a country, you're eventually going to have to leave. That's my problem with occupation as a means of defending the United States. Once you occupy a country, eventually you have to leave, unless you say you're going to stay there indefinitely.
Or unless you create conditions in which you can stay.
We've been there 8 years.
Peacefully,
what have we done?
As we are
for 8
in Germany
years?
and in Japan today.
There were no American soldiers killed after VE Day, and you know it.
And there were people killed after VE Day, as a matter of fact. There were Americans killed.
Not in Europe.
Yes, indeed.
Not in Germany.
Yes, indeed. There were. Chris, the point is,
when did this happen?
We had all kinds of operations that were going on by revanchist groups that were still trying to kill Americans and others. Was it large numbers?
I went back and checked
was
this.
It large
there was
numbers?
No activities
was it
after
large
45.
Numbers? There certainly were activities. Was it a mass problem? No. Has it been a problem since? No. And that's what ideally we would like to have in places like Iraq and Afghanistan.
How long do you want Americans to be the gendarmes?
I don't want them to be the gendarmes at all. I want them to be part of a stable government that denies the Taliban and denies the
permanent occupation
10, 20, 30 years, that's all.
Being present to support them,
just
as we've done in Japan
and Germany. At least you're open about it.
Just as we've done in Japan and Germany.
A permanent
no American today is insisting that those forces
this is what I've heard the neocons want. A permanent U.S. military establishment in the Middle East. That's what you want.
It's not in Afghanistan.
Hegemony in the Middle East.
That's not in the Middle East.
Iraq,
That's
Afghanistan.
not in the Middle East. I would personally like to have Americans forward deployed because I think we wind up saving ourselves a lot of grief.
The way they look at it is an occupation force, the way you use the term.
If we have, in fact, helped them survive what the Taliban is trying to do to them, I think they will be grateful to have us there, not regarding us as an occupation force that must be expelled.
So if you had a vote, right now, let me ask you a question, because I don't know the answer. Best questions, right? If you had a vote in Afghanistan among the people who are not Taliban right now, would they vote for us to stay?
I think rather than have the Taliban.
Would they vote for us to stay?
Rather than have the Taliban take over the country.
That's different.
They would. It isn't different. It's exactly the answer, Chris. You said you didn't know what the answer is.
Well,
that is exactly
the
answer.
They would vote for the American
They would
Army
rather
to stay
not be ruled by the Taliban again. And would you? Would you, Ron? Would you want to be ruled by the Taliban?
That wasn't why we went into Afghanistan in the first place, Frank.
That it will dominate the rest of the world?
That was not why we went into Afghanistan.
Ask yourself this. Would you want the Taliban to be victorious in Afghanistan? Because believe
what does that even mean, Frank? What does that even
not just the Taliban,
Frank?
but
What you were saying is utterly
worldwide will be emboldened
Frank.
and empowered by our defeat there.
It is a red herring because you have no argument.
You do have to take
you
responsibility.
Have no argument,
Gentlemen,
Frank.
one of the great ironies of American politics is the group in this country.
Your father would be ashamed of you.
That's not fair. The
Frank,
country.
It is.
You better watch your mouth
fair.
about that, Frank.
The group in this country that most resembles the Taliban, ironically, is the religious right. Thank you, Frank Gaffney, and thank you, Ron Reagan.